I'm Jack Howell. For some time I've intended to make a video about my Yamaha clarinets, and perhaps it would have been a better video if I could have said, I have no agreement with Yamaha, I am not a Yamaha performing artist. However, that ship has sailed. A few weeks ago I became a Yamaha performing artist. Not exactly global news, I know, but I'm going to tell you the story for two reasons. First, there's a thing on YouTube about disclosing business relationships, and this video marks that point in time between past me, who was not a Yamaha performing artist, and current and future me, who is and will be. Second, it says right there on my contract, artist agrees to include a clear reference to Yamaha, the instruments endorsed, and why the artist endorses them on artist's personal website, social media outlets, and social media posts. So I'm going to do exactly that. YouTube is my one and only social media outlet, so let's get her done. This video consists completely of my own thoughts. Yamaha did not ask for it, has had no input, has not reviewed it. I am receiving no compensation for making it, and as a matter of fact, Yamaha is not paying me to play their instruments, nor have they given me any instruments. What they have given me is formal access to Yamaha artist services in New York, which is priceless. I consider this video more a testimonial than an advertisement. Looking back through the email archive, I first started seriously exploring Yamaha clarinets in 2015. I bought my first set in 2019. I first became aware of Yamaha clarinets, period, in the early 80s. I tried them here and there, but I was a tough sell. As a young, aspiring clarinetist, I was A, heavily imprinted on my teacher Bill Jackson and my heroes like Robert Marcellus and Harold Wright. B, fearful of any equipment choice that might find disfavor with the committee, and C, not completely confident in my own judgment. So it is possible that Yamaha clarinets were just as good 30 years ago as I think they are now. However, given what I now know about the company, I think it is more likely that during the past 30 years Yamaha has studied, experimented, listened, and improved. The CSVR model came out in 2015, and when I asked, Yamaha sent me a set, an early production set to try. I remember thinking that they were beautifully made, had good resistance, but I had a couple of intonation gripes, and I wasn't sure playing them in the section where I sat in the mix. So I sent them back, but remained interested. A couple years after that, my colleague Ron Samuels bought a set of CSVRs and sounded fantastic on them. So a couple years after that, I was in New York for a concert, made an appointment at the Yamaha Atelier, and I think tried 4 B flats and 2 A's, walked out with a set. I might have been leery about picking clarinets given so few to try, but both A clarinets were clearly better than mine, and with the B flats it was a tighter race, but the Yamahas were extremely consistent. One of them seemed slightly better than mine, and none of them were necessarily worse. Considering that when I bought that B flat, to which the Yamahas were being compared, I tried at least 30 instruments, the fact that Yamaha had a contender in 4 tries was impressive. And after several trips since then where I have tried and selected instruments, I can say that while I have liked some instruments more than others, I have never played one that I would hesitate to recommend to a student. And that was that. I have not looked back. I remember after a year or so, Ron asked if I was still happy with my Yamahas, and my first and honest answer was that I no longer thought of them as being Yamahas. They were just my clarinets. But yes, I was happy. What changed between 2015 and 2019? Maybe, probably, over those 4 years, Yamaha made slight changes to the CSVR in response to feedback like mine. Maybe, Probably I had a different emotional response to and expectation of the clarinets after hearing Ron sound absolutely fantastic on his. You will note that I very carefully say Ron sounded fantastic, which gave me the impetus to try the CSVRs again. I did not say the clarinets sounded. I do not suggest that you take anything I've put on YouTube as any indication of how you might sound playing my clarinets, or of how I actually sound. I think the PSO clarinet section sound is clear and ringing, colorful, but not particularly dark. And if Yamaha didn't do that sound, Ron and I wouldn't be playing them. When I record these videos live, with no audio processing or editing, I'm always somewhat resigned to how they sound through headphones and absolutely appalled at how they sound on my phone. But my playing on my videos is purely to illustrate a point, not to demonstrate my equipment or to achieve a studio quality sound. I'd like to do that, but that's a future project requiring knowledge and equipment that I don't have. Anyway, I played those instruments for a season and a half, and they weren't in the shop once. I didn't get back to New York, but they needed nothing. Key balance stayed perfect, no pads leaked, no springs got weak, no keys got sloppy or rattly. When I finally sent them back to New York during COVID, it wasn't because anything was wrong, it was because, why not? I wasn't using them. Now, this right there was a different experience. I spent my entire prior career buying new clarinets, then sending them to Tim Clark for an overhaul before the first rehearsal. My Yamahas just worked and kept working. Then, in the summer of 2023, my B-flat cracked. After 4 years, I had thought I was out of the woods, but Heinz Hall was being renovated that summer, so we were playing concerts in unusual venues, including the public theater across the street. Now, I guess actors like it cold, costumes, makeup, exertion, because it was 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air conditioning was blowing dry, freezing air hard enough to move our music. It was Saturday, no building engineers were around to do anything about it, and we didn't have a temperature clause in our contract. And what can you do? The show must go on. While I was extremely irritated at the negligence that caused the crack itself was just one of those things. It happens. However, it wasn't until that horn was off getting the crack fixed and I had played my old instrument for a week that I realized how much I missed the CSVR. So I decided to buy another B-flat. Maybe to leapfrog my current CSVR or at least have a very close backup. That was the plan for my next visit to the New York atelier, but when I got there they had, in addition to the regular CSVRs, a couple sets of the new CSVR Atelier Special Production, or ASP, which, as it turned out, I really, really liked. That was annoying because I went about 400% over budget, but I haven't regretted it. For context, in 2016 the PSO was on tour in Europe and we had a concert in Lucerne, home of Das Blashaus. Marco is great. He's a mad scientist. I love his bass clarinet necks, so I visited him. And I had the chance to play a set of handmade Schwenk und Segelke BAME system clarinets. And I was blown away. They were fantastic. If they had been for sale, I would have paid anything. Anything. And I did my best to buy them, but I'm not a very good beggar. And Marco explained that these were demos, that if I wanted a set, I would have to order them and they would be handmade. Now, I realize it works this way for some instruments, but paying for clarinets you can't try, waiting a year, then being stuck with them doesn't really compute when you're used to trying dozens and picking the best one. So I did not place an order. When Marco emailed 6 months later to say that the demos were for sale, if I wanted them, the glow had faded and I was fresh out of $25,000 bills. The Yamaha ASP clarinets gave me that same gotta have it jolt as the Schwenken Sigelkes. A silky smooth keywork, even resistance, effortless color and legato, and I could take them home with me. So I did. In my career, I don't think I've ever been happier with my instruments. I play the ASPs indoors for rehearsals and concerts, and I use the regular CSVRs for teaching and gigs where the temperature might be iffy. If the B flat cracks, it was already cracked. It does a disservice to them to call them backups because they're great. The ASPs just seem a little more special. This past summer, I bought a Yamaha E flat as well because it solved some intonation problems for me without giving up anything on sound. They had 2 E flats, and my wife was with me and performed the model 681 to the other one, I don't remember what it was, and also to my old E flat, which was a Prestige RC. When I first played the 681 in work, she proclaimed it to be her favorite of all my clarinets. I wasn't sure exactly how to take that, but it is a very nice axe. Shortly after I bought the E flat, I applied to the Yamaha Artist program. And yes, it has taken this long. Wait a minute, you're saying. You weren't a Yamaha artist, but you were picking horns at Yamaha Artist Services for the past 5 years? Well, yeah. For any company, endorsing artists have priority. But the goal is to grow, to get more professional players into the tent. So while you can't just walk in off the street, if you have a gig or a teaching position, you might be able to arrange something. And as a member of a clarinet section that already had one Yamaha artist, I wasn't that far off. I've spent most of my career depending on teachers or better connected colleagues to help me find good instruments. So I understand any envy when someone like me gets to waltz in to Artist Services and pick clarinets. But if anything, my experience at Yamaha has made me even more comfortable offering my endorsement. Yamahas are super consistent. I'm not saying that you will like them, but if you do, you won't need to fly to Japan to pick instruments at the factory and worry about who got there before you did. They are all pretty much like that. When I bought my ASPs in New York, they had 2 sets, both great. My CSVR A was one of 2, my B flat was one of 4. When one of my students needed an A clarinet and Ron happened to be in New York, they had one CSVR A and it turned out to be great. I played it a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact, and I thought it might be even better than mine. And if there ever was a time when Yamaha clarinets did not compete with a clear, ringing, characteristic orchestral clarinet sound, that time is no longer. There's the old joke, how many clarinetists does it take to screw in a light bulb? Just one, but he has to try every bulb in the box. I spent many years with the mindset that to win an audition, you needed an Excalibur of clarinets. And that meant access to lots of instruments. Whoever got to try the instruments first out of the factory got the best ones. The remainder went to the hoi polloi. My experience says that Yamaha's changed that. Not only are they great, they're super consistent, and they cost less than comparable professional instruments. Some people won't like that. Some like the feeling of exclusivity, of having something nobody else has. Personally, I just want a great instrument. And if that means you get one just as good as mine, I'm totally fine with that. The ASP and a couple of other models notwithstanding, because the ASPs are expensive. Yamaha has largely stayed out of the race to see who can make the most expensive clarinet. With the CSVR and the SEVR, they strive to make a consistent, characteristic, professional instrument for the American orchestral clarinetist. They use great wood and they price them competitively. I find this admirable. Perhaps I am susceptible to this admiration. In 1997, I toured Japan with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and I had the time of my life. Every country, every culture has its problems. I'm not saying that Japan is utopia. But Japanese culture is very old and very strong, and I responded to it. Something that struck me during this visit was that in Japan it seemed like there was no such thing as a job that was beneath you. Cooking, cleaning, folding, fixing, there was no job so small or menial that it should not be performed to the absolute best of your ability. Attention to detail and beauty at the smallest scale was all around you, every doorway, every shop window. And I saw the most exquisite skill in Japan, from the man filleting eels in the fish market to the beautifully welded titanium two-stroke motorcycle expansion chambers in the Ueno district, to the woman wrapping cookies in paper like origami in an underground Tokyo supermarket. It seemed like everyone cared deeply about their work and was proud of it. I loved that. And I think I feel this in my clarinets. Perhaps I am over-romanticizing. Yamaha is a big corporation today, with worldwide annual revenue of around $3 billion, about $750 million of which comes from Yamaha America. It is owned by a mix of institutional and private investors, Japanese by a large margin. 23% of the publicly held shares are owned by foreign investors, but there's more to it than that. So control of the company is pretty much entirely Japanese. And remember what I said about Japanese culture being old and strong. The company was born in 1887 when Torakusu Yamaha repaired a reed organ and then began manufacturing them. And now, Yamaha is the largest manufacturer of musical instruments in the world. The making of musical instruments is ancestral. To my limited understanding, in Japan, that's about as important as something can get. Yamaha reveres and supports music by making instruments because that is what the company is. Yamaha Motorsports is a separate company that was born in wartime and spun off. Yamaha wind instruments will never be spun off. Yamaha will never stop researching, will never stop experimenting, will never stop investing, will never stop caring. It is a matter of honor. I admire this, I appreciate it, and so far as I am able, I'd like to help. I suppose never is a strong word, but if Yamaha ever stops caring about music and musicians, we're going to have bigger fish to fry than who makes our clarinets. And that's why I applied to be a Yamaha performing artist. Yamaha didn't ask, I offered. There. That's my experience. Yours may vary, and that's okay. We don't all have to like the same thing, and these days there are more choices than ever. From time to time, players preparing for auditions come through town and play for me, and I've heard clarinetists sound great on everything. Buffets, obols, Selmers, you name it. And I've never suggested that anyone change. I respect individual artistic choice. But things are different from the old days when you pretty much only saw one brand, hell, only one model at auditions. To the extent that the old school clear ringing clarinet sound has been diluted, I don't dig some of the new equipment. But then it gives companies that support the clear ringing sound, like Yamaha, a chance to distinguish themselves. Should you play Yamaha clarinets? Not necessarily. And Yamaha would be the first to tell you that. Yamaha says right there on the artist agreement, you should play whatever instrument you feel gives you your voice as an artist. Should you try Yamaha clarinets? Absolutely. Why wouldn't you? And if anyone from Yamaha has made it this far, watashi no clarineto wa subarashi desu. Arigato gozaimasu. Koscho arigato gozaimashita. Thanks for watching.